welcome. Great to have you all here to this session today as part of the Networks Festival. My name is David. I'm co-hosting this session today with my colleague Nenad. So we will be hosting between the two of us. And yeah, generative decision making. As we are working with teams, with communities, different organizations to support their collective intelligence to work in the realms of agility, participation, and specifically in self-organizing, obviously, how to do wise decision collectively matter. And so, yeah, we're inviting you all today here to have a personal experience, at least some of you, to take an active part in a generative decision-making process as decision makers. So we are applying this to a decision that concerns everyone here in this room present. So yeah, the basic structure of today is that we will start after checking in with this demonstration or co-creation, as you will. We'll hear about some basic concepts that are relevant to generative decision-making processes or consent decision-making in general, and do some reflection together between us. I know we're connecting here via Zoom using technology. Nevertheless, it would be super great if you could turn your video on if you have the capacity to do so, because that would give us a bit of a more humane experience, seeing each other's faces, seeing some reactions. That would be nice. Thank you. So
Maybe to add that generative decision making is a variant of consent decision making. An important disclaimer is that there is no one single right way to do that kind of a decision making. So we will go through a generative decision making process that was developed by Percolab in Canada. But there are other variants, and we will share resources about other variants, and we will also, as a co-host, make comments during the process. And we might even use this hand signal technical point. If you see us doing that, you will know that we will give an explanation or comment on what's going on. And also another disclaimer, we will first facilitate experience and then move into explaining theory. So experience first, explanations later. Over to David.
Cool, but maybe let's first land in the session here together. Maybe first using the chat to hear from each other a bit about the topic at hand. What's your previous experience with consent decision making? We can use the chat for that. Maybe you can type in the chat a single number between 1, I have no experience at all, it's the first time I hear about it today, to 5, I have a lot of experience, maybe even facilitated.
No, I think Grandma's good at playing poker with Deb.
So thanks.
Okay, looking what's happening in chat.
3.5. That's quite specific.
Yeah. Somebody knows what they are doing.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Great. So we have a great mix.
Great mix of people. That's great for what we want to do. Wonderful. And yeah, for a bit of a more personal check-in, I'm gonna invite us now into small breakouts of 3 people. So you will meet 2 random folks from this session here now in a breakout for the next 7 minutes to share about like, why are you here today? I'm seeing that people got up in the middle of the night to join, and there might be other reasons to do so. So curious to hear about that. And yeah, we're gonna meet each other in a breakout for a couple of minutes to share about this. Why are you here today?
Okay, so we will have some groups of 3 and some groups of 2. And both David and I, we will join check-ins. So
See you back here in a couple of minutes.
5 to 7 minutes altogether. Okay. So I see Gemma is not assigned.
Sorry, I've literally just arrived. I was.
Yes, no problem. I will move you. David, let me know where you will be going. Zarko, you are also here.
I don't know what the options are for the breakout room. Sorry.
I need to move you because you joined a bit late.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Let me see. I'm moving you to room 3, Gemma.
Thank you. Could you put in the chat what we're talking about? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Zarko, would you like to join a check-in? We cannot hear you.
Thank you.
Zarko, I cannot hear you for some reason. Okay, no problem. I'll wait for you here. Oh, actually, I need to go to room 6. I'll be back. Okay. Anybody here that needs to be moved? Let me see who is unassigned. Okay, we will wait for Zarko to come back. And Zarko, you are back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, and I see Sed. Sed, are you with us?
Yes.
So we are now in a check-in, doing quick checking. Here is the prompt. And if you wish, you can just do it here, Sed and Zarko, because Eva and
Sure,
we did
happy
it
to.
already. Yeah.
My laptop is extremely slow right now. This was my issue for the past few minutes, so Nothing is like, I don't know if my video is on or off. It's just, yeah, anyways. So I don't see anything in the chat. If you've written something in the chat, I don't see it right now.
Okay, the check-in prompt, just a few minutes. Why are you here in this session today?
Okay.
And you are with Sed, so Zarko and Sed.
Yeah, I was waiting. I can jump in. So I'm here out of curiosity, let's say. I'm at work, so I'll try to commit and stay for the entire session, but I may have some people calling me. So yeah, really out of curiosity, I've seen the event. It was done by a friend who is organizing another session, and I was very curious to hear the discussions here.
Great. Thank you for sharing. I think in my case is layers. One is just trying to be part of the festival when and however I can. So this is, I think, just my second session. Just busy with other things. Second, you know, just support Greaterthan in hosting this. And then third, specifically about this topic, you know, because I know a little bit about it, but my laptop's okay. I think finally catching up.
Yeah, and we can see you.
Now I see everybody, like, okay, I actually see people. All right. But yeah, and the third one is because, like, on this specific topic, like I know of the model, or like the if you will, but I never tried it, never applied it, and so I'm actually really kind of curious more practically. All right, yeah, how does that type of decision making work? Not that I will be able to necessarily implement it right away, but you know, still I feel like I know the theory behind it, but not like the practice. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. So you missed the explanation at the beginning. We will first do a demonstration, and then we will go into some explanations. And then at the end, we will have some time for reflections and questions and answers. So just so you know that it will be the other way around. First practice, and then theory. And we will also share some resources at the end. Okay, I'm closing all the rooms and everybody will be back soon. We have around 20, 30 people altogether. Okay. People are slowly coming back. David Heinemann, hi. I think I know you from Paddlecraft community, right?
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you again. Okay, everybody will be back in a moment. 10 more seconds.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope
That
you
was lovely.
good conversations. Yeah, as Denise just confirmed, she had one. Great to hear. So yeah, let's dive right into it. Nenad, what do you think?
Yeah, let's try it. Oh, we would like to do a demonstration, all of us together. And because this is a rather large group, I think it would be good that we select a group of decision makers of optimum size. Let's say up to 8 people that are willing to interactively participate in making a real decision that concerns all of us on this call. And the reason why we want to do it that way is because in our experience, the learning is best if decisions are real, not made up. So we are going to make a real decision about this group, about all 31 of us. And whoever feels like participating in a decision making, just raise your virtual hand and you will be spotlighted together with me, who will be facilitating that part together with some David's help. Okay, so Zarko is participating. Emma, great. David, you will do the spotlighting, right? So everybody, just so you know, in upper right corner of your Zoom window, if you are on a computer, you have a switch and you can switch between speaker and gallery view. So in speaker view, you will see us decision makers spotlighted, and in gallery view, you can always see everybody. There will be no slides. I have a request that we don't use chat during the demonstration, because chat will be used for the demonstration purposes and facilitation. So no comments in chats. After we are done with the demonstration, we will have some theoretical explanations, and at the end we will have a chance to have some reflections and questions and answers together. So I see right now we have a group of 6 decision makers. And I guess that would be it, right, David?
Yeah, thanks all for volunteering.
Okay. So, generative decision making. Generative decision making that we will share at the end. Generative decision making template or pattern has 7 steps, and we will go together through all these 7 steps. I will put the title and the explanation of each of the steps in chat so that we can all follow. And that's it in chat, please. Just steps, okay? So when, important assumption. In this decision making, we are all peers. That means we are equivalent. There is no more or less power between any of us. There are no seniors and juniors. We are all equal, okay? And when a group of equals is about to make a decision, what is normally done, and it is not part of the decision-making process, is something that in sociocracy is called picture forming, or considerations, or proposal forming. In generative decision makers, there is this step called ripeness. And here the group asks themselves some questions. And this ripeness is usually checked at the beginning of a session, or even before the session, before decision-making session. Could be multiple sessions preceding the decision-making sessions. When there is a general agreement, there is some kind of a ripeness, then the next step that is done is step 2, called proposal version 1. And this is where we start with our demonstration. Proposal version 1. For the sake of this demonstration, I am going to propose as a facilitator. And proposal is actually quite simple, I believe. And important thing is that it concerns somehow all of us, really. So let's see how it goes. So the proposal is that we are going to extend the session for 30 minutes. So instead of 90 minutes, we are going to take full 2 hours because of the need. And the part of the proposal is that all of us, 31 here, need to stay for the duration of this 2 hours so that we can all learn. Okay. So at this step, what is important maybe to know is, are there any clarifying questions from decision makers about this proposal? And clarifying questions are not about, do I have a different preference? Do I want something different? Is what is proposed understood and clear? Is there anything unclear in what is being proposed? And with that, we are moving into the third step of generative decision making, clarifications. So are there any clarifying questions from the decision makers? Just raise your hand or unmute and ask. Emma.
Can I ask why as a clarifying question? Why do we need to extend it exactly? Why isn't 90 minutes sufficient?
Yeah. So in theory, that is already clear in the first step. There are reasons that we discussed why this needs to be done, but I guess this is like a gray zone clarifying question. Is there anything you don't understand from the proposal? And I can answer why in a way that we believe that we as a facilitators, as hosts, we believe we need more time so that everybody has the experience or something like that. Catherine.
What will be the content of the additional 30 minutes?
It will be the same content. We will just take longer for all the elements presented at the beginning. That's one way to answer. The other way to answer could be not specified. So even the proposer doesn't know. Any other, Maren?
Why did you not plan it for 2 hours then? Like, what's the reason for the spontaneous change right now?
Okay, this is now going into discussion. Assumption is that
I'm serious because it's going to put, the counter argument. So I think you need a good answer for this.
Right. That's not a clarifying question, if you ask me. No, because assumption is we did the ripeness as a group, and now we are making decision that is proposed. Is there anything you don't understand in that decision?
Yeah, I don't understand the need, the urgency.
Okay, David, would you treat this question differently than me?
Yeah, looking at this number of people that are very engaged, as it seems like we even have 8 volunteers. It seems like with an engaged group like that, we would have probably more questions and answers to treat later on and possibility to give everyone the experience. So this is my need for extending the session. I couldn't know that before that.
Okay. It's more diplomatic than mine. Okay, any more clarifying questions? David.
What does it mean that everyone must stay?
So instead staying till 12:30, instead of staying till noon, my time zone, or 11:30 or 11 your time, we will move to 12:30 or 11:30 British time. Did you get your answer? That was very good example of a clarifying question.
I didn't quite like the must bit. I understood the time.
Yeah. So we are playing here. It's a demonstration. The must here is assumably clarified under ripeness. Anybody else has a clarifying question? Okay, if not, I guess we can move to.
Sorry to jump in like right at the end. So, are we clarifying what your mindset was behind it? Are we clarifying each piece of your?
No, we are just clarifying, is the proposal understood?
Then isn't that quite, I mean, I agree with everybody's questions, but isn't that then quite simple? So like to just read those words, it's like, that's very simply understood there, but then there's a whole lot more
Correct.
questions and things.
Correct.
Because I agree with
So
everybody.
at the clarification point, we don't enter debate, discussion, or whatever is usual way of treating conversations like this. We just need to check, are there any clarifications needed? Yeah. Shall we move the step 4? So here we have a reaction step. In some patterns, it's called quick reaction. And the usual way I explain it is that it's about very, very brief reaction that can be about some intellectual or mental content. It could be even about a feeling you have, or it can be even a body sensation. For example, I felt a knot in my stomach when I heard that. That's also valid brief reaction. And the purpose of this step is to quickly assess, is this ripeness in place? Can we actually move forward with the decision making or not? This ripeness is checked by facilitator and also all the group members. And good way to do it is in a round. And a round is usually very easy to facilitate when everybody's sitting in a room around the table. We usually sit in a circle and then go in that circle. In this Zoom screen format, I would like to facilitate it by calling 2 people at once. So person that is speaking and then the next person. So what would be your reaction to this proposal? Žarko and then Emma.
Sure, I felt annoyed by the proposal, and I think what bothered me probably was the must, the second part. Like I think with the proposing 30 minutes fine, but like the must.
Yeah, shorter the better, this reactions thing. Emma, then David.
In general, I think it's really important to stick to time when you invite people to events. I understand there's a lot of people here, but there's also a lot of people in different time zones who likely have other things to do. So I think we should stick with the agreed time.
This was not a very good example of a quick reaction because there was debate following up. Quick reaction is just one word, one sentence about a thought, about a feeling or a body sensation. David, then Catherine.
I think I've got this feeling, which is something like betrayal.
More than enough. Catherine, then Maren.
I love the idea. Makes me happy being on Zoom meetings all day.
Thank you for playing. Maren, then Trish.
I'm also annoyed because it's not, the need is not clear. Like it feels too, oh yeah, I will just do it that way. Why not?
Trish, then Nea.
I was worried because there's so many reactions from all the people in here.
And finally, Nia.
I'm both irritated and curious.
Great example of a quick reaction. Thank you. Okay, so what can happen at this point, at least in my practice, and David, please share how you would do it. At this point, what can become apparent is that there is no really ripeness to move forward with this decision. So I, as somebody who is making a proposal, I can either tweak a proposal or withdraw it completely from a decision-making process. And in generative decision-making, what is assumed and preferred is this tweaking of a proposal. David?
No, I see it the same way. Usually what I do is instead of doing quick reactions, I ask actually for explanations because that gives me more clarity around as to why the reactions appear and helps me to see is tweaking more useful or withdrawing as for ripeness of the proposal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a little bit biased with my Sociocracy 3.0 practice, which is trying to do things in a sooner rather than later. And in situations like this, if all the previous steps were done, I would probably just withdraw it based on reactions I received here. Okay, but because we are doing this demo, let's see what we can do that concerns all of us. So as a proposer, I would like to tweak this proposal. Let me just find it. And I'm tweaking it like this. So the proposal now is extend the session for 30 minutes from 90 to 120. Whoever wants stays longer. So the proposal is tweaked, and we will now go in the next step. Again, we could quickly check for clarifying questions here, but because we already did, and that's a variant of a proposal, we will now test for objections. And objections are the way decisions are made in consent decision-making. And it's very different from, let's say, majority voting, where you count votes. When objections are raised, what we are looking for are arguments about how this decision influences the purpose of the group or creates risks for the purpose of the group or creates risks for my role within the group, individual's role within the group, or misses the opportunity for improvement. So in a conventional sociocracy language, what is usually explained is that objections needs to be paramount and reasoned. Certain importance and also arguments attached to objections. Okay, and objections can be also tested in a round, particularly if we are sitting in the room, or we can test them or check for objections by asking people who have objections to speak, or we can use hand signals. That's the quickest way, both on Zoom and in room. And what is usually done in terms of hand signals is that thumbs up is no objection or consent. this signal is concern. It's not an objection, but I have something to be taken into consideration. An objection in when we are in a room is done as a palm up gesture, which doesn't really work when we are on Zoom. So on Zoom, we use palm towards the webcam signal. So this is different ways you can express objection when you are doing consent decision making. David, anything to add at this point?
No, that sounds pretty complete.
Cool. So let's check. Are there any objections from any of decision makers to the final version, the latest version of the proposal? Okay, Catherine, Emma, they have concern. We have 2 objections. Okay, let's hear objections first. David.
I feel like there might be people who can't stay for that longer time, and you might be depriving them of some learning that it's on you to fit into the time available.
Yeah.
Mine is very similar, that with the additional 30 minutes, how do we communicate to those who don't participate what gets discussed in those additional 30 minutes, because otherwise they miss out.
Cool. Okay. So based on these 2 objections, I would like to tweak the proposal, and basically it's one more sentence. Recording will be shared with everyone. And does that resolve your objection, David and Nenad? Nenad, would you like to explain?
If any decisions are being made in the last 30 minutes, how do we ensure that those who can't participate online can then participate? I mean, I guess how the recording is not going to help them participate in the decision making. So we need to know what the agenda is of the last 30 minutes.
And your objection is about something that is emerging lately as a practice in consent decision making. The thing is that this method was designed in pre-computer times. And it was usually done in the meetings where people are together in a room. And then I guess minutes were typed on paper and put on a bulletin board or something. Now that we have computers, it is quite usual practice that decision makers that were not present at a decision-making call, they can actually be asked for objections within a period of time after decision is made. Yeah. So we can integrate that into decision, into proposal.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that if we can integrate that.
Catherine, is that a question? We will discuss it later. I would like to finish the process first. Catherine.
It's an objection.
Oh, you change your mind. Good. That's doable in this process.
My objection was just looking at the piece that you've said, a backward movement for the organization. There's something that would start to get into like reputation if we start doing this kind of stuff and not sticking to our timelines and doing recordings instead of doing it in person.
Okay, and what's the objection?
The objection is that it's a reputational risk.
Okay, this is a real decision. It concerns only this call, nothing else. Only us that are present on this call.
Yeah. Who are all part of the ecosystem, right? We're all part of a network, like the broader network. So we're all linked to the reputation of this work and this practice.
Right. Okay. So what you shared sounds more like a concern to me than objection, but I'm going to ask David, what's your take on this? How to treat this?
So you're asking me, right, Nenad?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if it's up to Catherine to define whether she sees it as an objection or not, because it's basically on everyone's personal, accountability to define whether they can go within a decision or not and carry it forward, which I find is the beauty of consent decision making, because basically you have to have everyone aligned behind the decision. So if Catherine says for her it's an objection, I would treat it as such.
Yeah, that's one approach, definitely. We are making a technical point before moving forward. So the other approach is that objection needs to be qualified according to certain predefined criteria, and that's a whole, technical rabbit hole to go into. But some facilitators or some groups prefer that whoever is making objections qualifies it, and some do it differently. They define criteria to qualify objection as an objection. We will share something about that in resources. So
And she did that, right? She did that. She qualified it as not being her personal opinion or preference, but rather she qualified it because of a reputational risk that she sees.
Okay, so I'm trying to keep up with objections. Are there, Catherine, do you have a suggestion how to actually tweak the proposal to integrate your objection? That's another good practice from the consent decision making. If you have an objection, it is expected that you come with a proposal how to resolve it.
No, I guess the reason I was sort of joking at the beginning about loving long meetings, but I think what I liked about it was that everybody would be there. So I think maybe my proposal is something about decisions all happen like synchronously. So there isn't a part where like some people leave and have that recording. Like everybody has the same experience as a basic principle.
Right. Okay, I've seen many hands here, and I just want to check, are we going into discussion and reflections, or is this about giving more objections to the process? Trish, Nea, David.
Mine was to add to Catherine. So I was like, yes, I would agree with what she said and how she said it. So I would make it an objection as well. So I wanted to add my weight behind her.
Nea and David, can we go to the final step?
Yeah, I don't know what the final step is, but I feel like my objection still stands. So tell me what to do with it.
Okay, can you repeat your objection?
If I kind of restate it, slightly different words, but it's the same thing. It's that I feel like you're abusing your privilege in this situation.
And what you would like to change in a proposal?
That you have to help me with this, but I think I would prefer we stayed with the plan today, and then you let us know if things need to change in the future with more notice.
Okay. That's of course valid objection that can be integrated. The good thing with the consent decision making is that it is all about balancing individual agency with collective intelligence. And it is all about avoiding to create minority and supporting to include diversity. And this is what I particularly like about consent decision making. Instead of creating minority, it integrates whatever comes up as objections or concerns. So based on this last objection, I guess the proposal is we end at noon, my time zone. And final step is Again, testing for objections. Are there any objections to the final version of the proposal?
Can
You can use the hands.
clarify your time zone?
CET.
Okay.
So it will be like in 40 minutes. We end in 40 minutes. Okay. Any objections? You can use the thumbs up for consent. Okay. We have a decision. And I hope it was useful for the purposes of learning.
Thank you.
I guess, David, it's your turn now with some background
Yes.
explanations and theory.
I just get everyone again off spotlight. Maybe you can help me with that, Nenad. Thanks so much for bringing yourself into this experience, not really knowing what's going to expect you. Thanks for being brave and making a decision on behalf of all 31 of us here in the room. Great. Before we go into questions, I already saw in chat that people might have some, and there is space allocated for that without extending to 2 hours. So I'd like to give a bit of context around generative decision making or consent decision making in general. So I'm going to share a couple of slides. Not many. You should see my screen now, I hope. So yeah, obviously there is the right time and right place for using a generative decision-making process. Just to put an extreme example, if I get a heart attack on the street, I might prefer that someone just calls an ambulance and gets a doctor right away instead of engaging with everyone else about what needs to be done now in this situation, right? Because there's a high need for urgency, me having a heart attack, needing to be treated right now, and the knowledge of what needs to be done is actually quite wide dispersed because most people know that calling an ambulance or a doctor is the right thing to do if someone has a heart attack. So in such cases, emergency situation, chaos domain, consent decision making might not be the right thing to do. But in a lot of other instances where knowledge is somewhat widely dispersed, so people can contribute to a decision being wiser, and where we don't need a decision right away, like in the next couple of minutes, consent decision making is a really good tool to take decisions collectively. But obviously there's others. We know majority voting for in democratic systems, and we know autocracy decision-making in not so democratic systems. And there's a couple of more of decision-making practices that we observe in various systems that are either more or less participatory. And the ones we see more frequently in participatory collectives, groups, organizations, communities are the ones highlighted here in orange. And yeah, you might be confused by the fact that I included autocratic voting in this. But in order to keep like that balance between agility and participation, agency, it might make sense to have some elements of autocratic decision-making in a group. If it's quite clear what is the domain of decision-making here. This is why we also added role-based, because not for every decision it might make sense to use the collective intelligence. If the impact of a decision is not very long time-wise or very heavy in terms of like impact, it's totally fine in some instances to leave the decision to one person only who wears the hat for that decision. Like, for example, what we're going to have lunch tomorrow in the office, or what is the color of the pens that we're going to buy. If that's not strongly related to, I don't know, our corporate coloring or whatever, not this might be totally fine. And yeah, next to the consent decision making, where GDM, generative decision making, is like one form of, there's also the advice process, which allows yeah, a collective, a group, to make a decision quite quickly, where not all the collective needs to be addressed or asked for consent. But before making a decision, I would get advice for people that are either affected, have experience, or can bring an important perspective onto the table. And yeah, as you can see, they all differ regarding like accountability, participation, but also speed. So as Nenad has said, there is not this one right way to do things, and there is not this one way about how to do decisions in a group, but rather what we are seeing is yeah, something like a decision-making protocol that is being established, where you basically define together, deciding together how you want to decide, which then will include various forms of decision-making, defined as in like where to take decision which ways. Yeah, and the beauty of consent decision-making, I think Nenad laid it out quite beautifully before, is about like not creating minorities and having working on an eye level, not having power over, but rather power with. And it's quite, well, a lot easier to reach consensus, which is not the same thing. Because consensus is rather about preferences. And yeah, the scheme that I got from Rich Bartlett, part of Inspiral, it's laid out quite nicely that my circle of preferences might be quite small. And if I just have to decide for myself, that might be easy. But as soon as it includes other people, this overlap between shared preferences gets actually quite small. Thinking about, I don't know, which color we should use to paint our office. I might have a preference for blue, but I think it will be very hard to meet each other's preferences if we if we apply a consensus mechanism here. So this shared area of our own our preferences will be even maybe non-existent in order to get to a consensus decision making. Talking about consent, though, we're not talking about preferences, we're talking about our zone of tolerance. So while I might have a preference for blue, I can tolerate a lot of other colors. Maybe what I would exclude here is the color pink or black. And with all other colors, I would be okay, even though they are not within my zone of preference. And this is true for a lot of other people. So basically, a consent decision is looking at this area where our tolerances overlap. So we're not looking for meeting each other's preferences. If we can't, great, but this is not what we're looking for. We're looking at where our tolerances overlap. So basically, any objections that would be put forward is where a single member of this group or community is not meeting their level of their zone of tolerance. So basically, all objections would be outside of their zone of tolerance. And yeah, as we can experience and as we have experienced probably in our lives, this is way easier and way quicker to meet. If we would have looked for consensus in the decision that we have just experienced together with Nenad, we wouldn't have been done within half an hour. And in my experience, basically with every decision I had the honor to facilitate so far in groups, communities, or teams, you can be easily done within half an hour with any decision. Which sometimes might just involve thinking about, okay, we can't get to a decision right now to move us forward, but at least knowing like what is the next step we're going to take to look at this. Anything to add from your side, Nenad?
maybe just this last point. There is this important and useful principle in constant decision making that we are looking for a decision that is not perfect, but it is good enough for now and safe enough to try. And there are ways to tweak decision with the group so that it fits this principle.
Yeah. And also, I personally find quite beautiful that this process is also inviting us to change our opinion based on what we're hearing. So after having a round of reactions and maybe hearing from each other what they think, what they feel, you can also do a second round. At least that's how it is done in sociocracy, where I can say, well, after having heard from Maren, I feel that the objection I had before is actually not true anymore because I didn't include this perspective. So yeah, it's working actively against this dynamic that we observe a lot of times, that we create factions, that we try to stick to our positions, and where this becomes some sort of a personal thing. And instead, it is inviting us to take a step back and not identifying ourselves too much with an opinion that might have come up. And it's really emphasizing and grading in this process this idea of equality of opinions in the process. So there is naturally a power with dynamic instead of the old paradigm of power over. And yeah, making it time bound. For example, in sociocracy, you would also include a best before date, so to say, for this decision. So you would say, this decision is valid until end of August, and we define someone who will bring it back to the table again to revisit. And that by itself allows ourselves way more often to feel it safe to try, because we know there will be a moment when we revisit and we have some experience collectively to look at this decision that we have taken together. And that can be shaped by the group, right? If I don't feel it is safe to do until August, but maybe it would be okay until the end of July to make it safe, this might bring us closer to get everyone to consent.
Okay, we have a number of questions now in chat that we may want to start processing. Is there anything else you would like to add, David?
Oh, I could talk about this forever, but I'm happy to speak about questions.
Yeah. So first to check with Sed, you had some comment or question during the demonstration, Sed?
No, it was a question related to the exercise game more than.
Okay. Okay. Then there is a question from Denise. Would you like to speak about it, Denise?
Certainly, yes. So my team is integrating the use of fair process, meaning there is a group of us, we call us the core op team, who you are trying to use this methodology that you shared here, but we want to bring it out to a larger group to get a broader insight to what we might be exploring. So what the proposal may be, and then to bring it back to the core team for that actual decision making. So I'm just curious about discussing that, if there was anything that you might mention about that process.
Yeah, I can take that, David, if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
So something that I learned from Ted Rao from Sociocracy for All, when the large groups of people are concerned, is that a good pattern to apply is that you reduce the number of the decision makers, but you increase the number of feedback loops. And that basically means if you have defined a group or circle that is making decisions on behalf of a larger group, which sometimes can be like hundreds of people, it's good practice to design a process of consultation that is looping into that process. And that is usually something that is being done during the proposal forming stage in developing a proposal. So it's a pattern that precedes decision-making itself. Anything to add, David?
Yeah, maybe a detail from sociocracy is that the way they approach it is structurally. So in sociocracy, you would have circles that are linked to each other with representatives to make sure that one circle obviously is free to take a decision by consent on their own. But as this will be then transferred, this information will be transferred to other circles by having representatives that represent those different circles. They can then make sure that as soon as a consent decision is taken by another domain, which would prevent the other circle from achieving their goals or, yeah, basically putting in danger the mission, they could basically then object. So this would be then fed back to the original circle. So this allows you that you don't need to take all decisions within a wider collective, but still ensuring that there's enough of a feedback loop to prevent decision being taken, which is not in line with what the organization wants to achieve.
Yeah, and there is another useful principle. Whoever is affected by decision needs to be included into decision making in some form. So nobody is ignored. That's the basic principle in this approach. Okay, let's see. Are there any questions? People, you can also raise your virtual hand or like Maren just did it, but I'm going through the chat first. Faizan, zone of tolerance, perceived versus actual. What are you thinking?
I think Faizan already left, so he can't elaborate on that.
Okay. Is there anything to add about zone of tolerance? I think it's pretty intuitive, I would say. For me, it's not black and white. It's not binary. There is always some gray zone where you can move with your colleague decision makers, or they can move within the process.
And having a conversation with my colleague sometimes allows me to extend or decrease my zone of tolerance based on the information I'm getting from my colleagues.
Yeah. So there's a question from Nenad, which is pretty clear. I would just read it now if you don't mind. Can the decision makers engage with each other, agree, disagree with each other? Is there a space for that? So how would you answer that question? And then I would also like to answer David.
So in generative decision making, like the process defined by Percolab, usually there's not a lot of discussion. The idea is really to hear from each other and then go quickly through that process. The way I was trained in sociocracy, you would have multiple rounds of hearing from each other, and of course you can then build on each other as opinions. But the idea really is to remove this dynamic of like arguing with each other by going in rounds. So you could address what has been mentioned before, but not really engage in discussion or fighting over positions. And yeah, disagreement is great. It makes the decision wiser in the end.
Can I quickly just go back to what you said before this, which is like in a conversation with a colleague, there is a chance that your window of tolerance will expand. And
Yeah.
so then isn't that a possibility when you are talking within? So it's not necessarily to sort of get into arguments, but it is to try and understand another person's.
Yes.
Inform each other.
By hearing you, for example, who explains to me that, well, actually, green has been shown scientifically to be a color in the office that calms my mood down. Before I didn't know that, that might extend my zone of tolerance where green was not included before, for example.
Yeah. So my answer about this very good question is that in this kind of decision making, we actually want to avoid debate. We want to avoid dialogue, and instead there is a structure if followed can actually integrate what is the most important for decision. And this is true for all the patterns in, for example, sociocracy, holacracy, and other methods. Instead of having conversations that are like what's the English word? The wool, the ball of wool, or something like that. The conversation is separated in a clear and easy to do steps so that the process works for itself. What is happening quite often, if a group is well versed in consent decision making, there is no need for a facilitator because everybody knows what are the steps to take and they simply go together through these steps. What is also happening in organizations where consent decision making is a regular practice, for example, in my organization, my local organization, people just having casual conversations ask each other about concerns or objections, even without a formal process, just as a way to inform each other about something they want to do together. So it could be said that consent is a type of a culture that is developed over time. Okay, I see we have Theo.
Yeah.
And Emma has a question.
And there's
in
Maren,
chat.
Denise as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and Maren, yeah. Theo, would you like to speak?
Sure. Yeah, I got a bit confused in the demonstration about at what point can an objection just be no, I don't accept any form of this proposal. I don't think that any amendment can be made, which I think is kind of what we got to, but it felt a lot during the process that it was like it had to go ahead. It was only about tweaking. And I guess my question is about like in kind of non-generative or sociocratic decision making, objection means no. It doesn't mean I have a suggestion to alter. And so what, like in that objection process, how do you kind of name and like deal with that line between I have a small objection and here's a tweak, and I have an objection, I don't think there's any version of this that I'm willing to work with.
Okay, so let me try to answer this, but the demonstration was not really perfect. It was just playing and doing the best out of it. The objection is something to be integrated into decision. It is usually requested that objection needs to be explained to colleagues, to decision makers, so that they can understand it and integrate into whatever decision will be made, so that quality of a decision and alignment of a decision with the purpose and avoiding risks and avoiding things to be better is reduced. And I'm not sure does that answer your question, but objection in this decision-making process is similar to voting in majority voting. It's a moment when decision is made. The difference is when you vote, that's it. There is result and it's passed or not. Here, when you test for objections, there is a part of the process where objections are integrated, resolved, so that the quality of decision is improved. Very good question. Thank you. David, anything to add?
No. So Emma is asking, what's the difference between consent decision making and generative decision making? Well, generative decision making is one form of consent decision making. So the larger circle would be consent decision making, and within this circle you have generative decision making, but also a couple of others, different approaches, different processes. In the chat you will find some resources that are variants of consent decision making, and yeah, this GDM process by Percolab is just one of them.
Yeah, and it is a mixture of holacracy, consent decision making process. Holacracy is another set of methods or patterns. and art of hosting, which is a facilitation approach that has a certain principles that they adhere to. So they just mixed the two to work for their specific context, and then they shared it with the world as an open source knowledge asset. And you can find the link in chat to that knowledge asset and other examples.
I think if I'm not wrong, now would be the moment for Martin to ask a question, because I think she was before David's question, but I'm not 100% sure.
I'm busy. David, that's okay.
Fine.
I've been using these kind of processes in Berlin a lot, and they kind of fell on healthy ground, like people picked it up fairly easily. And now I moved to Bergen, Norway 2 years ago, and it's completely different context. And like the whole idea of collective leadership is somewhere different. And I feel now that I'm so used to working with these kind of processes, but I feel a lot of impatience from the people. Like, why don't you just go ahead and make this decision? And I'm trying to explain and why this is important and how I want to create ownership and all of this, but I'm struggling. Like it's so I'm wondering anything really, like if you have some comments or ideas on either like what do we need in order to even start these kind of decision-making processes? What needs to be in place first? Or what are easy ways to invite people to experiment with it? And maybe something more specific to the impatience that sometimes, comes with it. Whatever, I'm very open to your reaction to it.
I share your experience, Martin. And yeah, I think it's heavily related to culture, not necessarily like based on, obviously as well, based on where you live, but also like the community, the group that you are part of or trying to make this decision. And as I've been sharing before, I don't think it's wise to use the consent decision mechanism for every and all decisions you need to take. Because as you can see, it also binds quite a lot of resources. People need to understand, they need to get clarity on the topic at hand, to form an opinion, and then to participate. And this might not be necessary for every decision. So in some instances, it might be totally fine that someone says, well, why don't you go ahead and take this decision if this is safe enough? The other one being, I think this culture can shift if people have positive experience about using this decision-making form, so to say. To experience agency, to experience that their perspective matters, and also to experience that a decision at the end of it, why there have been objections, is actually wiser than the initial proposal. To experience that an objection actually is a gift to that group that needs to take a decision, not something that blocks the process from going forward, but it actually offers another perspective that might have not been seen otherwise by the group. So it enriches the decision making in the end.
Yeah, and that's the reason why the gesture, when people are in the room, is a palm facing upwards. You are making a gift. And very often understanding that makes that switch. I completely agree with David that this is about culture and one particular element of a culture. How do I feel ownership of a group or the organization I belong to? I think that's it. Martin, play with that.
Yeah, because it's very interesting. Because that means it's very closely related to this, like, do I belong to belonging, right? Because with collectives and communities, not always that clear who should be included in the decision making. So, and then it gets nice and messy and complex. But it's
Yeah, and that's another element of sociocracy, defining and clarifying domains, and defining or clarifying decision makers within these domains, but that's completely a different topic. But yes, it needs to be clear who is making decision and who is not making decision, which does not mean that who is not making decision cannot be involved in making decision in some appropriate way, but decision makers need to be clear.
So we have 7 more minutes and a couple more of questions. Should we try to address them all? That would be my ideal outcome. So David is asking about trauma awareness. Can you say a bit more, David?
Maybe in the time, let's jump to Sed's questions, kind of connect, I think, something similar.
Let me just briefly read it. What if there are hierarchical roles within the group, either official or implied, making decision-making always going in favor of the chief? Actually, I'm also asking what, from a chief perspective, would you search and formatting to have more shared ownership? How to deal with the process if there are continuous objections to refinement? Is there a point where it's better to just put a proposal on hold rather? Yeah, great questions. One actually also addresses Trish's question about like the pitfalls. I think because you need to have a culture in place that is willing to bring objections forward, even though this might be perceived as disturbing the harmony. As we are perceiving in a lot of groups that are experiencing or practicing for the first time, naturally are more in this green realm of spiral dynamics, have a hard time bringing objections forward because they just want to be happy with everyone, and that an objections might be perceived as disturbing the harmony of the group. So it needs to be practiced that it's okay, that it's a gift to bring objections forward as it enriches the collective decision. Because if that's not in place, just what has been described here might happen, that bad decisions are being brought forward, maybe because you want to be in favor of the chief, because you have this perceived hierarchy, or yeah, there is no mechanisms in place that can then resolve any conflict that might come up from this.
Yeah, as far as the second point is concerned, good enough for now, safe enough to try. Very agile approach to decision making. We are not looking for perfection. We are looking for a decision that works for a period of time and that it's safe as an experiment, if you wish.
Yeah, the idea, or one of the ideas for consent decision making is that you have people feel ownership of that decision. So if I consent to this, it is expected of me that I support carrying this forward, whatever this is, because I had this moment of like objection before. So a decision that is just consented, even though people might not be on board, just to be in favor of yeah, a chief or a hierarchical dynamic, you will quickly see that this is actually not really working out. Not sure whether this actually addresses the question of David around trauma and emotions at work.
I can try to answer David. So the assumption is that we are nurturing adult-to-adult relationships, and that assumes being able to discuss things openly and also address emotions by self-regulating and co-regulating. And of course, it's all about organizational culture that can be more or less trauma aware, I would say.
And yeah, to add to this, consent decision making doesn't solve it all. It's just like one element, and obviously there's more elements to integrate to really address also trauma awareness or trauma informed collaboration, including like communication styles, communication mechanisms, all this. Yeah. Roberto, you had your hand raised before. Was your question addressed? Okay. Sarko.
Oh, so sorry. Now always an extra button, so I have to press. I have a kind of a more practical question. So like, I don't want to bastardize the process and want to be faithful to it. At the same time, in certain contexts that I operate, I'm basically facing a bunch of people who just basically need to even decide how to decide, to quote, you know, one of the sociocracy books, and like just the concept of like how do we even make a decision, or when are we making the decision, even the decision is being made, is kind of beyond them, so to speak. And so it's almost like if I am in a situation where I try to just move them towards a decision, right? It's almost like I would use elements here and there, like it's sort of like trying to check for objections, maybe not necessarily with the language, right? Or trying to sort of like take pieces here and there. So I guess my question is, how do you introduce this as a practice without like is there like I don't know, like a more, you don't jump from like people don't even know how to decide to like, okay, now we're doing this, right? Type of thing. Is there like that's one thing. The other thing is like, are there certain elements that sort of like as a on ramp? Is there something that like some simple things I can take from this process, not the full 7 steps, to just help a group just be a little bit better just making decisions regardless of, you know, how they make them, like what process they adopt? So I guess that's if I'm explaining this well, what I'm getting at.
What I think is already a value in itself is structuring the decision-making process in various phases. Like, that's why I think Nenad before was so clear and strict about like, is this clarification or not? Because a lot of times what we humans tend to do is wrapping our opinions in clarification questions. And I think it helps a lot to separate those, for example, and like, okay, is anything around the topic at hand right now clear or not? And let's clarify those things first before engaging in actually how the decision then gets made later on. So that would be one thing that can be used without having to do the full consent decision-making process. Yeah, Nina, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think it's important that there is agreement and understanding what decision-making method is being used for what. It cannot be assumed that whoever is participating in decision-making is clear with that. So explicit agreement about decision-making methods is needed. And there is a hand from Denise.
I wonder if you have good guidance or tools in regards to how to assess the culture or the group that you're with for, are they ready to step into even the consideration of these types of methods? So how might you start to integrate or use these types of tools based on where the culture, the framework is for the organization you might be working with?
Great question.
Yeah, I don't have any special tool. I just talk to the group and present different ways of doing things by possibly demonstrating benefits of it. So you can try these methods just for the experiment's sake. You don't need to commit in advance that you will use it all forever. Just try it and then see what happens with the group.
And also, usually I experience introducing consent decision-making principles or practices that does no harm. Introducing it as compared to how it has been done before. So a group might develop culturally into something where it's working even better, so to say. So developing the psychological safety, the willingness to speak up, and all of that. Yeah. And of course, this needs to be there to a certain degree, where I have to fear repercussions because I'm raising an objections that might be not a really good place, obviously, right? But a culture might develop into a more psychological stable and safe place in order to do that. So we have been told clearly, Nenad, that we need to finish within 90 minutes. That was the collective decision. Yet I would like just have a shared moment of checking out and not just the two of us talking all the time, Nenad. So would you introduce a checkout for us, Nenad?
No, just a sec. I'm lost for a moment because I was looking for our links on LinkedIn. But anyway, look us up on LinkedIn using our names and
I can
connect.
put them in the chat.
Yeah,
I have them here. Yeah.
Okay, so we would like to do something that we call Chatterfall. Again, one way of using chat as a facilitation tool. The point here is that you respond to a prompt and don't press enter. You will press enter on mark together, and then we will have a harvest. So the prompt is how you are leaving this session, what are you taking with you, the usual one. And we are doing Chatterfall because we want to do it in a minute. Just type your answer and don't press enter for now. Okay. Are we ready? You can signal. Okay, I see some people still typing. Okay. Okay, so let's do 1, 2, 3. That's all a good harvest for us and form of a feedback, David.
Wonderful. Thanks all for joining. Thanks for you volunteers who stepped up to participate in this process and model. Thanks for the great questions. They generate learnings for all of us. And yeah, feel free to drop us a message, to jump on a call with us.
And thanks for staying in discomfort.
Have a wonderful evening or day, depending where you are, and maybe see you at any of the other Networks Festival sessions. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Oh. So I lost Fatum at one point.
Stop the recording.
Yeah.